Welcome everyone to Through the Void Gate, a Warcaster podcast for new and experienced players. Deploying in 3.
Hello and welcome to Through the Void Gate. I'm Justin, Dino from the Discord. I'm here with Sneaky Buffalo from the Discord.
Hey.
And we're going to be talking Kickstarter 3 stuff. We're really excited to do the ISA episode today. One quick clarification from our last cast. If you've already listened to the AC cast, I hope you enjoyed it for one. For two, we came up with this weird question where we weren't sure if a solo removed its own activation, if it could activate twice, because the wording in the rulebook is kind of not entirely clear about that. You could interpret it both ways. I asked a question on the Kickstarter, and they did clarify that you had to choose a different solo to activate for your second solo activation. So no Devil Divine Tempest activations.
Yeah, and they said that will become, or double axe activations. They said that'll become clear in the new rulebook.
I am super hyped for the new rulebook.
Agreed.
There's just a lot of little things that I think if they just tighten up the wording just a smidge, the game overall and the community overall would get a whole lot out of it.
Agreed.
So without further ado, let's jump into the ISA, where they introduced the new Cadre, which is 2 squads, an attachment that's our first 3-person attachment. Spoilers. A solo that comes with the Cadre, the Headsman, and then they have the Automech, which is the solo that got added, and Asa, which is their new hero solo. So let's jump into the Cadre, and then we'll jump into the other ones. Nikki, do you want to read the Regulators card?
Yeah. So we'll start off with the Regulators. So the new ISA Cadre is called the Alliance Regulators Cadre, and the first squad is called the Regulators, which is confusing, but we'll survive. So the Regulators are a DC3 squad. So it's our first DC3 squad in the game, along with another one that we'll talk about in a future episode. And they're exciting. They're chunky boys. They're speed 5, mat 4, rat 3, defense 2, arm 4, with 2 boxes. So they're like mini marauders. They have the thrusters charge. Interesting that... So what it does is, while charged, this model ignores movement penalties for rough terrain, just like the regular thrusters charge. But additionally, for each arc this model is charged with, it gains +1 defense. So that probably is going to need a name change to differentiate it from the other thrusters. Because...
Why? This is the exact same charge as is on the Strike Raptor.
No, because they're... Is it? I thought it was 2 different...
The Strike Raptors also gives Pathfinder. It just normally doesn't care about it because it turns on flight most turns.
Oh, I thought it was a different charge that gave it the +1 defense. I could be incorrect. Okay, never mind. Ignore me, if that is the case. Because, yeah, okay.
I'll look it up real quick while you finish that.
No big deal. I could just be crazy. Alright, so that's their charge. The only other stuff they have going for them is their weapon. So they come with a range 2 POW 5 Void Hammer with Null Strike, and they can spike for Disruption Engine, which is when this model hits a target with an attack, it can spike to cause enemy cipher cards on the model to expire. So they have a spike for Malefactor, just like the demons. So we always joke around that the Paladin Weaver with their Void Hammer is the Whoppin' Stick. These guys have the real Whoppin' Stick, range 2 POW 5. Now they're an interesting squad. They're very expensive at DC 3, but they are relatively tanky. With only 1 attack, even though it's POW 5 and mat 4, their output isn't the highest in the world. Oh, they do have compound armor, like most other ISA squaddies. Their output isn't the highest in the world, but there are specific situations where they can shine with that null strike, which is generally going into heavies, because things like the Sentinel and the Strike Raptor get a lot out of their arc being on them. And then also, of course, Void Gates. If you want to take down a Void Gate, these Regulators can make quick work of even a 5-arc Void Gate. So they have a really interesting place where they're relatively tanky. They can like sit on a point. They're going to be relatively hard to remove. And then in certain situations, they can really, really shine.
I did double confirm. It is the same charge.
It isn't? Okay, I thought there were two different. But okay, cool.
Yeah.
Good to know. All right. That's what I get for not looking at the Strike Raptor card in a year.
Yeah. I mean, we just always take its rules for granted, right? We've played so many games, we just know the things it does.
Yeah, like what the are is irrelevant.
It's very hard sometimes to, you know you're doing things because it's right, but you sometimes forget why they're right.
Yeah, like the system block discussion.
Yeah, I know. We had a big discussion about that, even though we knew we were wrong. Like, we just didn't know why we were.
Yep.
I think what makes them exciting is their attachment.
Yeah. So the squad itself is interesting. It's balancing out their high DC with what they do. It makes them not as awesome as they particularly could be, unless they're in that specific situation where they shine. But they also have a really interesting attachment. So their attachment is the Witch Hounds. Like all attachments, their speed is equal to the Regulators, so it's going to be speed 5. They're only Mat 3, Rat 3, only defense 2, and arm 3. So they're relatively squishy. But for 1 additional DC, bringing the total deployment cost to 4, you get an extra 3 Witch Hounds. So you've got a 6-person squad running around, which is crazy. Plus, we know with ISA, with things like Tachytelic, that those seemingly low numbers can jump up pretty high. But what's really interesting about the Witch Hounds is the abilities that they add to the squad. So first off, they have Arc Exchange. Everybody loves Arc Exchange. It just gives you a lot more flexibility when it comes to manipulating your arc. It also lets them drop their arc off if they don't have a situation to spike for Disruption Engine, which is nice. On top of that, they have Spotlight, which everyone is used to. It's nice. It's there. It's more relevant now. It's a rule. It's more relevant now than it ever has been before.
Correct. There's a lot more stealth that's just native stealth in the game than there ever has been.
Yes.
But
the really interesting thing about them is their spike. It's called Psycho Disruptor. And when your opponent targets a model, any model, within 5 inches of one of these Witch Hounds, so a model 5 inches of this model with a cipher, you can spike to cause the cipher to be discarded without effect. Then this model is destroyed.
This is crazy powerful.
Yeah, it's super powerful because everyone knows how important your ciphers are. And imagine your opponent wants to Impulse Inducer their Strike Raptor, and you've got a charged Witch Hound sitting there within 5 inches of it, and you go, nope.
Yeah, or say they need to velocity projector your Morningstar off the point so that they can get on the point and score it. Nope. Like, there's so many cool and crazy things you can do with these guys and I mean, if it's their first Cypher phase and their whole turn is planning on that, and they've charged, okay, I'm going to charge my Strike Raptor. Okay, well, I'm going to play the Impulse Inducer. Nope. You have just shut down their whole turn, right? Because their whole plan was to activate that Strike Raptor and do whatever. Now you've got them on the back foot. And, when you're playing in like a real tournament or something, like a clock is a thing, you're just going to have them eat a whole lot of clock right there.
Yep. Yeah, it can definitely create really, really nasty situations for your opponent, which is basically what ISA is all about. It's like, it has 2 things that it's really good at: spamming stuff and making your opponent have to make really bad decisions. And
right.
that's they do a great job of sticking to that aspect of ISA on both accounts.
I want to I'm talking about them together. I want to love this squad. I know I've played them a couple times. They've been pretty meh. Like nothing exceptional. I think I've only actually made like 2 hammer attacks with the Regulators. They just don't generally get where they need to be often enough. But I think one of the really limiting factors of this squad is just that it's very limited attacks for 3 to 4 DC.
Mm-hmm.
Like if you go to 4 DC, then every time you're thinking, well, would I have rather had a Headsman or a Morningstar? And that's a real consideration.
Yep.
It's hard to say, and like you don't want to gate crash these guys out because the Witch Hounds are, in my opinion, are what make this unit so freaking cool.
I mean, I think the Regulators are fine without the Witch Hounds, but the Witch Hounds add a lot of utility that's unique utility that you can't find anywhere else, which is really, really cool. I have had
a lot of range attack too, which is
it's range 6 POW 3, which we didn't get into, so it's nothing to write home about, but it's something.
Well, what's weird is that it's also force. There's a lot more like force ranged weapons in this cadre even than I think the rest of ISA combined, which it would not mean anything except that Phaetheon now exists.
Yeah, well,
and that's one of the
incorporeal keyword exists now.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
I am excited to see where else they put that. But now ISA's like the only things that care about it in the cadre pretty much are the sword on the champion and the hammers. Oh, I guess the Regulator Reeve does not like it at all, but
yeah. But yeah, so I mean they're interesting, but once again it comes down to that DC. DC4 is a lot, and I mean most ISA forces are going to be looking at 3 DC4 options between the Morningstar, the Headsman, and then a full Regulator squad. I mean technically they could be DC5 if you throw a Quartermaster on there, but yeah, just it's a tough sell. I have had the Regulators be able to shine. I've had them murder a Strike Raptor, which felt really, really good. I had some really lucky rolls, and then I've had them absolutely destroy gates.
Yeah, gates seem like their specialty. Like that's like their niche. But 3 to 4 DC for killing gates, it's a tough sell for me. I want to love these guys. I think their models look cool as hell. I think they're almost there. I almost wish they just had cleave or something to give them extra attacks. They just need something.
Yeah, I think well they're interesting because like destroying the gate can be a big swing. So if it's really good if you're ahead because then you can just keep your opponent behind and it just creates really big problems for them. But even if you're, but also there's a situation where like if you're behind, and you can go up and you can murder a gate, and that gives you that opportunity to get back into the game by throwing off your opponent's tempo. So I mean, that's really, in my opinion, that's their specialty. It's Sentinels and gates are like their go-tos for. That's what they're there for, is taking care of those 2 things, and then Strike Raptors to a lesser degree. Because Strike Raptors' increased defense means that they're probably not hitting, but
Map 4 is also pretty OP on them.
Yeah, but I mean, you also have to consider jumping it up to Takatelic plus Asia. Like, then they're jumping up to 6 and 2. Like, the thing with ISA is you got to think of it like Menoth. Like, there's a lot of different ways of them stacking up buffs.
Well,
I
don't like that comparison personally because Menoth, every turn you get to activate these buffs, right? If to get Asia to do her things, you have to either set up this thing ahead of time, many turns ahead, and she has to survive. Like there's a lot of like things have to do this Rube Goldberg machine to get there, right? Like you have to have a turn also where Takatelic is your best play, even though maybe you need to go to this gate over here. It's like I don't like those comparisons necessarily in Warcaster just because they do have access to these things, and it's important to bring that up. But to act like they're going to have it a majority of the time, I think is disingenuous.
Oh yeah, for sure.
And actually, what I've been doing in my ISA decks is I've been running Plexus Densifier and Tachytelic, just so that when the one falls off at the end of the pulse round, I have a good chance of having the other one up.
Yeah, I think that's a good strategy.
Because they're both they do really well with both.
Yeah, both of them are high value on the squad for sure.
So I think we beat up the Regulators enough. You want to move on to Tracers?
Yeah, so we're going to jump into the Tracers, who have awesome models. I just want to throw that out there.
I love these guys.
They're
they
just
are
these sweet little drones, man. They're so cool. Like, a lot of times I don't like drones. Like, Tal's drones look dumb to me. These things are cool.
I'm totally digging these, and I cannot wait till somebody gets like really interesting flight stands for these. Like I'm thinking like Jetsons things going out, where it's like the little circles going around the flight thing.
Cool. Yeah, that could be cool. What I don't want to see is like smoke, because it just doesn't make sense.
Yeah, smoke doesn't make sense for these guys. Yeah, I'm thinking like the little Jetsons, like streams with the little circles coming off of them.
Yeah, like little force, like
yeah,
that'd be cool. But onto the squad itself. Let's get some stats going here. So they are officially the fastest squad in the game, barring
they're
spikes.
the fastest non-vehicle in the game, right? I guess the Strike Raptor can spike for speed 9, but like base speed.
Right. Yeah, I think they're the highest base speed in the game. So they are speed 8, mat 3, rat 3, pretty normal. Defense 3, arm 3, pretty normal. They have flight, and they only have one box. So they have, normal squad stats, other than their ludicrous speed. Now, they do have some really interesting abilities here. So first off, they gain Entropic Field, which is the +3 defense versus Furies. It's nice to have.
I did not know why they have that rule. Like, I love that they have the rule. I just, like, it'd be cool if it was like
fluffy.
A cadre-specific thing that, like, maybe the whole cadre was just resistant to Furies or something.
Yeah, I think
I just don't know why they specifically have it when, like, the Regulators don't. And the Witch Hounds, which look like they have, like, these anti-psychic helmets, don't.
Yeah.
Why did these guys have it?
Well, I think so. Like, the whole thing is like the cadre in general is like for hunting down witches or whatever, and each individual unit has something in that theme. So I think this is their anti-witch themed ability. Right? The Witch Hounds have the anti-cipher. The Regulators have the null. Tracers have Entropic Field. Regulator Reeve just kills things.
Well, no, he has the void disruptor.
Oh yeah, he's got the void
pulse.
disruptor. We'll get there. Yeah, and Headsman just kills things.
Headsman just kills it all.
Headsman just kills things. Yeah. But back to the Tracers. So they have Entropic Field. They also have a unique ability we haven't seen before, Power Harvester. So when this model destroys one or more enemy models with an attack, you can immediately charge one other friendly unit within 10 inches of this model, which is awesome because you can throw an arc onto your jack that's about to activate, onto your squad that's about to activate. Well, not another squad because they just activated. So ignore that. But
I mean,
you can
start
throw
throwing
it
the arc on like your Headsman or these things that have these passive buffs. Like, maybe you just summoned Regulators last turn with their Witch Hounds, and you're really worried about him targeting something with a cipher. Well, you can charge up your Regulators, not on their turn, and then after these guys kill something, and then suddenly you've got that cipher denial built in. So I think this is a really cool rule. I think that this. They're not like the scariest models in the game, so it's not gonna be super common for you to trigger it, but when you do, you need to recognize it because it's a very, very powerful.
Yeah, 100%. I mean, throw in an arc on a Morning Star with a defender, or the squad, defender squad. If you're taking those,
there's a lot of really good options. Even just like Asa usually just walks up and spikes, Well, she gets cover if she's charged. So if cover is important, maybe that's your way to keep Asa alive.
Yeah. Like,
It's a really cool rule with a lot of implications, and I love it.
Yeah, lots of options here. And as the model line expands, the options are going to expand, which is
Well, and that's
exciting.
kind of interesting. Is it doesn't say like during their activation or anything. So if for some reason you think you can kill something with an aggression theorem out of the blue with one of these guys, and you do it, aggression theorem essentially turns into a worse arcane synthesis.
Yep. It's super exciting stuff. Just lots of options. In order to enable that, they have Smart Lock as a charge, so they ignore cover with ranged attacks. Their gun is a range 10 POW 4, so pretty standard stats, with a spike for Shockwave. So when this model declares an attack, so you're only going to get to do this with one model, with this weapon, it can spike once to cause this weapon to become a spray weapon when resolving this attack. So that's really useful for if you're shooting something that's in cover, because now you lost 1 red dice to make them lose 2 red dice on their defense, which is a win.
Well, you actually don't, because wouldn't give them cover anyways.
Oh yeah, that's right, because they have Smart Lock. So never mind. So it just lets you hit.
Well, the thing is, if you're hitting more things with it, like squads are going to be much more prevalent in the game now, right?
Yep.
And one thing I found in the time playing this game is that sometimes it's just almost impossible not to give somebody a good spray that gets at least 2 to 3 models.
Yeah, I mean,
especially with these guys being
speed 8 flying squad that lets you position things 2 inches off of the initial target. Yeah, you're gonna get a spray line.
You're going to give somebody a decent spray if you're putting squads out. Like, there's no avoiding it. So, it is sometimes it's a consideration. It's like, well, I could have a better chance of killing this one squatty, or I have an okay chance of hurting or killing 2 squatties. So it's definitely a choice. I think it's not the most exciting part of their card. Like, I think the speed 8 is something that ISA has been begging for a long time. Speed 8 with flight just lets you get those gates way up the board. They let you do a lot of shenanigans. I'll get into some of those with the hero later. Mm-hmm. One thing to note is that these guys are the only ISA squad without compound armor.
Correct, because they're little floating drones.
So, no compound armor for them. So they actually, unlike most of the rest of ISA, they care about blast a little bit.
Mm-hmm.
But I think they're super cool, and I think they fill a niche that ISA really likes. And, one of the hero character actually just adds a lot of implications to what they can do. So, be on the lookout for them. They are actually super nasty. And with Tacatelic or something, that's Mat 5 ignoring your cover, or Rat 5, Rat 5 ignoring your cover, and just that kills things, right? So.
It does.
Even just reiteration complex and ignoring your cover and being charged, that's a bunch of attacks. A quartermaster hits you first and puts you corroded, and then these PAL 4 attacks are much scarier if they do happen to hit. So this squad is really cool. I think its big thing is just that it's fast, and ISA needed a fast warrior model squad that could put out gates far up.
Yeah, agreed. It definitely fills a role in ISA that they haven't had. So
I mean, I think even just doing Gatecrasher, Tracers, and a Reeve is a super strong opening for ISA, because from there on skirmish, you can pretty much put a gate anywhere you want on the board after that turn, suggesting your Tracers live.
Yeah.
To it.
All right, so moving on to the Regulator Reeve, who is the new ISA solo, and this guy.
Can I read him? He is
yes.
He is my favorite model. The first thing I saw when he's got his big fire sword and he's got an immolator strapped to his arm, which is a purifier here, but an immolator strapped to his arm. Dude, this boy spoke volumes to me. And then I found out he was a Weaver, and we were best friends ever since then.
Yep.
So the Regulator Reeve is an ISA solo. He's speed 5 because he's a chunky boy on a 40mm base. He's Mat 5, which is important because he's got a big sword. He's Rat 3, which is fine. He's got that immolator on his arm, so it's good. Def 2, Armor 4, Focus 4, and 3 boxes. He has Arc Relay 12, so he has the same relay range as the regular Weavers. He has that same thrusters charge as the Regulators, so again, that's basically Pathfinder and +1 defense if he's charged. But he has one of the best spikes in the game, I think. Just because there's so many cool things you can do with it. So, Void Disruptor. This model can spike once during its activation to clear 1 arc from each enemy unit within 5 inches of this model.
Mm-hmm.
Like, thinking about this, that's like an 11.5 inch diameter circle on the board where you just remove 1 arc from everything. No, it does not hit void gates. It's enemy units.
Right.
So it would be probably a little bit too good if it hit void gates. It is like, that Strike Raptor that your squad is going to be going into later on. You void disrupt it, and now he's defense 4 to 5, which is much easier to hit. The Sentinel, you're going into the Sentinel. That means he's only going to get, well, I guess against the Null Strike, he only ever gets 1 attack anyways that he's going to defend against. There's a lot of little things in the game, or even just removing cover from something that's getting cover from a charge lets your other shooting get into it a little bit easier. That spike has a lot of implications.
Yeah, or dropping off a grafter charge, or all kinds of just different options. Like, it's funny thing is Mira actually has the same ability, but you want to keep Mira charged 24/7.
Does she seriously?
So it doesn't get used.
I've never used that ability.
but the Reeve, you don't particularly care about it being charged.
Yeah, Def 2 to 3, I don't feel like is a huge bump.
Yeah.
I think 3 to 4 is a huge bump just because of the way that attacks work in the game.
So like, it's not that big of a deal, and it's potentially really useful. So this is going to get used on the Reeve a lot, and also unlike the normal Weaver, it doesn't get the Fury range extension from being charged. So you don't care about that either. So like, Void Disruptor is going to get used a lot.
Basically, if you care about defense 3, keep him charged. If you don't, like me, don't ever keep him charged.
Yeah. If it comes down to this Reeve needs to hold down this point and not die, keep him charged. Otherwise, he's DC1. Bring him back.
Yeah, he's DC1 for this chunky Weaver boy. Like, I think that what I like the most about the Reeve is that I love Weavers. And it's been very hard to keep Weavers on the board ever since Empyreans came around, because phased projectile cannons are just cruel and unusual punishment for Weavers that are 3/3 with 2 boxes. These guys being 2/4 with 3 boxes for the same DC means that maybe the first phased projectile cannon doesn't kill me. Hell, maybe even the second one doesn't. Right? So it actually just gives me this potential to have a Weaver out so those Furies don't get locked up in my hand. And I think that's part of what I love about him. What I also love about him, he's also an output solo. He's got Weapon Master, and he has a range attack that is range 12, POW 4. Now, it is only Rat 3, but they have confirmed on the Kickstarter that both of his weapons cause continuous fire. And I love continuous fire. If anybody's talked to me in this game at all, continuous fire, I think, is one of the strongest effects you can put on somebody in the entire game.
Yep.
And both of his weapons having access to it is insane. So, most of the time you're going to miss with this Rat 3 weapon, but having just the chance to throw it out on a vehicle or something that's not going to get cover anyways, it's an option, and it's a good option to have. Then he's also got a 2-inch POW 5 plasma sword that, like I said, causes fire. So this Weaver is an output solo that's a Weaver that's a chunky boy that has utility.
Yeah.
Sign me up.
Just want to say, Mat 5, 2-inch range, POW 5, fire are the same stats as Astrius' melee.
Yeah. And Astrius, going into this, was probably the best statted model in the game.
Yeah.
I think
Atreus still has better stats than the Reeve, but he's also a hero. Like,
I know for one, I'm not super interested in getting 2 cadres for ISA, but I sure as hell want 2 Reeves. I think owning 2 Reeves is going to be a big part of full-size play for ISA in the future.
yeah, I think they're probably like one of, if not the best, just all-around solos in the game. They're tanky. They have great output. They have utility with their fire and their void disruptor, and their weavers. Like, they just do everything.
I don't know what more you could ask for 1 DC.
Yeah.
Like,
He's got
if you're
combo.
asking for non-hero 1 DC models in the game, there's an argument that he's one of the best.
Yeah, for sure. Like, there's
Back Totem's been dethroned.
there's there's definitely an argument. He can have the same defensive stats as Back Totem. He just can't heal himself.
Yeah. I'm trying to think who else I would put in that realm. And I'm kind of drawing a blank here, even with all the new stuff, right?
Yeah.
Maybe the Saber.
Well, the Saber's a
Saber's
DC too.
2 DC.
Yeah. The only other one
I'm
DCs,
having a
I mean,
hard
we've
time.
got the only other one DCs we have to compare. We got the Strike Leader, who's really good, has a lot of utility, but is not in the same realm as the Reeve. You've got the Vassal Boss, who's gross, and the Kitty Cat, they just all do very different things.
Right.
So it's hard to compare them.
The thing is, I think he also adds in beefiness and a weaver, which is something we really haven't seen that much in the game.
Mm-hmm.
Like he's got Raxus's defensive stats, and Raxus is a hero.
Yeah.
So I don't know.
And
I'm in love with this model and his concept and what he does.
yeah.
Like
for sure.
I was pretty excited about him before I found out he was a weaver, and then they had that focus value on there. I was like, whoa! I'm excited for him.
Yeah, really, really good model. Just it's probably the most exciting model out of the ISA cadre, just because of how good he is.
You're
mean-
right, but you're wrong. But you're right.
Like,
I think Asa is the only contender.
well, I said cadre. Ace is not.
Okay, Cadre, yes, 100%. I agree.
Yeah. The next thing we're going to talk about is also exciting. Definitely exciting. But I think just in general, overall ridiculousness for what it costs, the Reeve takes the cake.
Yeah. Now, the next model on the list is the Headsman. And this is a model where I just feel like they are pushing their boundaries. They're just throwing out rules on things and seeing what sticks and what people freak out about and what's going on, because this thing has rules all over the place.
It does. That is very true.
You want to read it or do you want me to?
Sure, I'll take it. So we've got the Headsman. So this is the champion model. It is a heavy warjack of DC 4. It is
Actually, technically, it's a champion warjack. It doesn't classify itself as heavy or light.
This is true. This is true. The
I
only
know, that's
one.
being pedantic and silly, but that was one thing that people were like, it's gonna be a light, right? Like going into this, they were like, oh, it's gonna be a light. I'm like, nowhere has it said anything other than champion. And then the card comes out and it still says champion. God!
Yeah.
Even though it is a
that's
heavy.
fair.
it is a heavy. DC4,
it's
I
a
think,
heavy.
just qualifies it as a heavy.
It just doesn't have the keyword. Assuming that is ever relevant in the game, it does not have the heavy keyword. So it is, again, slow. It's speed 5.
Speed 5 actually has been relevant.
Yeah.
I know
Strength 5.
Just today, Speed 5 became a very big deal.
Oh, really?
Yeah. Twice it actually became a big deal. Like originally, if he was Speed 6, I could have Ascension Catalyst onto a point. But because he was Speed 5 and goes only to 7, it just wasn't enough.
Gotcha.
The Speed 5 has actually been super limiting.
Yeah, it's slow.
It's definitely slow. Strength 5 for whenever that's actually relevant in the game. Mat 4, Rat 4, Defense 3, Arm 4. So it has basically the same initial stats as a Morningstar, but with one less speed. On to its rules. So first thing it has is Dominion Converter. So this is the same thing that Siegebreaker has. So when it is hit by an enemy attack, immediately after the attack has been resolved, you can charge this model. This becomes relevant because it also has thrusters. So whenever you attack it, and it gets hit, after the attack, they charge it, and then its defense goes up. So at 3 arc, it is at defense 6, and tuned up, it becomes a defense 7, arm 4 with 4 boxes. So it has the potential to be fairly tanky. I mean, not as tanky as a Strike Raptor because it doesn't have arm 5. But it does have the option to be pretty tanky, and it is able to charge itself much, much easier than a Strike Raptor just being in ISA and having this Dominion Converter rule.
One thing I think is a little sad is that, like, I personally find the jump from Armor 4 to Armor 5 to be massive.
It is.
And
I just you don't want me going on a rant about the Divine Tempest right now. So.
The Armor 4 for a 4 DC model is a little, but I get it because he gets the defense 7 so easily. At least the defense 6 so easy.
Yeah. I can't tell you how many times I rolled 4 on my damage roll when trying to kill a Divine Tempest last night. It was gross.
I mean, that's the way it is for me. Anytime I fight a gate, a sentinel, anything with armor 5, I for some reason have like the worst time.
Yeah. And on top of that, like it goes into multi damage, like having to roll a 10 instead of an 8 is a big deal.
Yeah.
And a 15 instead of a 12. Like that's a big.
It becomes huge very quickly. Like, when you're rolling like 6s, it doesn't matter. When you're rolling the 5s, it doesn't matter. But when you roll 4s, when you roll 8s, like it matters so much. And with a 4 DC model, it's hard to when you take 2 damage in in that first shot against him, like your butthole puckers a little bit.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and when you start throwing in armor piercing and corrosions and things of that nature, it gets rough. Like I'm just looking at the day where the headsman, like for whatever reason you've misplayed, you don't have any arc in your well, and the headsman gets shot.
That's the really scary situation, right?
Gets shot by something. You're playing against AC. He gets shot by something that gives corrosion, and then the vassal then the boss walks up and goes pew pew, and suddenly you're armored 2. Like
that's the problem I feel with the headsman is that in order to make full use of the Dominion Converter, like the Siegebreaker getting 1, and you don't even usually care if you get the 1 on it, right? The Siegebreaker's rules are okay on their own, and like they add some kind of value to them. Of course, like anything charged is better than anything uncharged, except for Tolkien. But it can't be charged.
Yeah, you can't. Can't be charged.
But anyways, it's one of those weird situations where you have to. You're not even keeping the arc back for anything. Like you're not keeping it back for Furies. You're not keeping it back for a lot of things. You're keeping it back to charge this thing during your opponent's turn. And if they do multi-damage twice, then you just lose him. And you've made this whole game plan based on something that doesn't work. He is a huge, like, this is a gamble. I'm putting him here. I'm gambling. Let's see what happens.
That's the case anytime you drop a heavy on the board, though. Because you're almost always going to want to keep 3 arc back, because hopefully you have Arcane Synthesis in your hand, or you have an Astrius or a Paladin Weaver to charge them up. Especially on ISA, you're going to be keeping it back because you've got so many ways to charge things. Like,
to be fair, though, ISA never really cared about having something charged like this. Like, this is a new experience for ISA, wanting to have 3 arc just sitting on something.
I completely disagree.
Really?
Yeah, because my Firebrands always have 3 arc. Always.
Yeah, but you don't want it sitting on them, though, right? Like,
no.
Firebrand is pretty optimal with 1 to 2.
No, my Firebrands always have 3 arc. And if you're not running them with 3 arc,
you're doing it wrong. Because you have
I've
weavers.
done pretty well with just my 1 to 2 arc firebrands.
You have weavers and you have arcade synthesis. You're losing out so much by not charging them. But that's just a playstyle thing you're not used to. You also play AC, or you're used to like hoarding Furies, hoarding stuff for Furies.
Yeah.
So on to the rest of the Headsman, because this is where
Yeah.
stuff gets actually exciting.
Yeah. Let's talk about the Insanity gun last.
So yeah, oh absolutely. So first off, I'm just going to say it has Revelator. That's going to be relevant, or not?
Revelant.
Yeah, it has Revelator, so it can ignore stealth. Woohoo! First off, it has, unlike other Warjacks, it cannot be modified. It has a set weapons profile. So it has a heavy fusion blade. Nothing fancy about it. It's just a range 2, POW 5 kinetic weapon. So it punches stuff with swords attached to its arm real good. Which is good.
Yeah.
I'm never gonna complain about a range 2 POW 5 melee weapon. Next up, we have the Tractor Cannon. It is a range 14 POW 4 with winch.
And lockdown.
And lockdown. It's getting there. So, winch. When this weapon damages an enemy model with an equal or smaller base, so everything except for vehicles at this point, or actually, I can't even say that because the Storm Raptor is a vehicle and it can get yoinked now. So immediately after the attack is resolved, the damaged model can be moved directly toward this model until it contacts a model, an obstacle, or a structure. So it's a yoink. It is the longest range non-fury yoink in the game, and the highest POW yoink in the game. So one of the big issues with the other winches was that they were POW 3, and they were either range 8 or range 6, which made them much less usable. But on the Tractor Cannon, I mean, range 14 POW 4, that can give you a lot of options. And then having lockdown on top of it, like, lockdown can be super key. So this Headsman can be on one point and pull a model off of another point with range 14. Like, or it can, pull a model into melee range, and then if you have Kinetic Accelerator, it just spins around and murders everything. Like, it has a lot of applications, and it's just a really, really solid gun as far as scenario goes.
Yeah, it
Any
does.
other? Yeah.
And, well, actually, I actually had a situation come up today in the game I played where he cleared off a point for the most. He did clear off the point, but his other gun, the Insanity gun, missed a vassal gang boss, right? And I had positioned myself pretty poorly. I put myself in the middle of the point because I was also in a forest. So I was trying to mitigate a potential velocity to get me off the point. Like, he had to actually deal with my Headsman.
Mm-hmm.
But when I missed the vassal gang boss, it meant that I couldn't use my tractor beam anymore, because if I did that, I would be contesting the point with myself if I didn't kill it. So be careful of that. You can really mess yourself up because it was Moonshadow where the points are not anything, so you can stand on them. So I was in the middle of that point, and if you winch something onto that point before the end of your activation, you will mess yourself up.
Yep.
I guess the winch is optional. You don't have to move it, so I guess I should have shot it anyways. But it ended up not mattering. But it is a can. So for some reason in my head, I was like, nope, not going to do this. This is a trap. But just be careful. Just be careful before you get excited that you're going to pull something close. Make sure you can kill it. Because if you don't kill it and you don't score a point because of that, you're going to be real mad at yourself.
This is true. So then we're going to get into the Insanity gun. This is
It's actually called the Eye of Sorrows. I don't know why I keep calling it the Insanity gun.
Because we were keeping it a secret. We're going to reveal everything all at once. So this is the strongest gun in the game, period.
Ooh, I like period.
Like, I mean, even PP has called it like the strongest weapon or something in other words, but yes.
So this is the Eye of Sorrows. It is a range 12, POW 6, strafe, spray. Yes, you heard that right. Strafe and spray on one weapon with arc booster, which is where it can spike to cause a target of the attack to suffer -1 arm. Thing to note there, it does say the target of the attack, so you can only spike on the model that you target with the spray, not on the other models. So that's relevant. It also has Soul Seeker. So Soul Seeker allows you to target warrior models with this weapon without line of sight. It has a very interesting interaction with sprays as they currently work. We'll see if this changes in the new rulebook. But the current interaction is you can target the model, but because sprays cannot make attack rolls on things outside of line of sight, and Soul Seeker does not give you line of sight, you cannot make an attack roll on the model. What it does for you is it allows you to change your spray line to where, say, if you were going to target the model in front of you, you would only hit one model, but if you target that warrior over there, you would hit 2 models. Now you have a better spray line. Also, it can allow you to avoid on-target effects like Reflex Cortex or Guardians from Corvus and Impulse Reciprocators, things of that nature. So it does have utility. It's just a little bit weird.
Yeah, I personally think it's gonna, like, I think somebody's gonna walk up and try and do something, and then they're gonna be like, "Oh, I can't do that? That sucks." Like, I think it's gonna be a lot of feel bads for people when they realize how it works and stuff.
Yeah,
I think it's just so corner case that it is useful. When I asked about it on the Kickstarter thing, they said that they were looking at it, and they're that part of the rules on this card are potentially on the chopping block.
Yeah, they said they might just get rid of Soul Seeker. I like it. I think it adds some interesting utility, but if it goes away, I won't be crying.
Honestly, this is a champion model, and like we were talking about his durability, how what's sad about defense is that it's so skewy.
Mm-hmm.
The number of times you roll all blanks on defense dice, it isn't uncommon.
Right.
Like,
and they're white dice. There's no telling what they're gonna do. No telling.
white dice are just so all over the place. Like, I could be rat 2. I'd be like, I'm gonna throw this thing at your defense 6 because I have no other targets, and even though it's a waste of my time, you can roll blanks. And I've hit things like that before.
Mm-hmm.
So, I mean, what I'd rather see is them make like a unique rule for him, considering he is a champion model, and change it to something like infrared targeting, and he gets a line of sight to warrior models regardless. And then that would get around the spray thing, because it just says that for sprays, it specifically says if you lose line of sight through terrain.
Yep.
Now, currently, terrain is the only way to lose line of sight because models don't block line of sight.
Yeah.
Nothing else blocks line of sight except for terrain.
Yeah.
So
it just doesn't really make a whole lot of sense. I mean, I guess you could imagine like him shooting the super crazy eye beam through his eye, and then it goes like literally through a wall and hits something. But like, other than that particular instance, like, it doesn't make sense that he's shooting at something on the other side of a wall and the thing gets hit, right? Like, phase projectiles make sense because it's literally like teleporting the bullet. Like, you're not teleporting.
You are going to
a
try
line
and
in a
justify
spray.
why phase projectiles make sense, but having a spray that can go through a wall is just nonsense.
Yes.
Meanwhile, like, you watch mecha shows all the time, and bullets go through walls. Okay, this is a PAL 6. This is one of the most powerful weapons in the game. It's tied for like the particle cannon, or whatever it is on the Strike Raptor.
Oh, as far as POW goes, yeah.
Yeah. Like, it's literally like one of 2 PAL 6 guns in the game. I think there's only 2 of them. This and that. And I mean, I think the idea of this blasting through a wall makes thematic sense. And I think that if you made the rule something like infrared targeting, like, I think having a warjack that's seeing these warrior models through the walls with infrared, I think that makes a lot of sense, and it's cool, and it's thematic. I don't know if it needs the ability to target warrior models through walls to be strong.
Yeah.
That's a different thing.
Yeah,
But
I
like
don't think this gun needs
just to make the
anything
rule
more.
work the way it seems like they want it to, though, it would need to be a slight wording difference that grants it line of sight to those models.
Mm-hmm.
And so I'm hoping they either do that or just take the rule away. Because I think that the things that you're losing for losing the rule are so niche that it's not actually hurting anything, like 99% of the time. You'll play 50 games, and chances are you might find one game where that niche rule might have helped you.
I disagree, but
I do not. I think it's so niche in the way it currently works that it's like, why add this extra layer of bullshit to the card when you could just remove this? The card, everything reads much more clearly. Everybody's on the same page. Like,
you know me. I'm all about the spray lines. I'm the spray king. So I like the rule. I think it's useful. I'd be fine if it keeps it. I'd be fine if it loses it. I don't think I'd be fine if it got a buff, but at least not
he's
to
a
this.
4 DC Arm 4 heavy. Like, there's a fair chance that when he comes out, he just dies anyways. And he's only speed 5. It isn't like he's affecting the other half of the board most of the time.
Yeah, but I mean, he's defense 3, armor 4, and his defense goes up. Like, none of the other heavies do the same thing, and the other heavies are 3 and 3, 2 and 5.
Literally does the same thing.
No, it doesn't. It doesn't charge itself, and it's 2 and 5 instead of 3 and 4. Now, armors. It's really hard saying armor versus defense, but defense that's scalable versus armor. I think those went out.
More killable than a Strike Raptor.
At full charge, absolutely. But fresh out of a gate,
I would even say like one.
Fresh out of a gate,
same.
Fresh out of a gate.
The difference in armor 4 and armor 5 is huge. I'd rather him be defense 2 and armor 5. I would feel better about putting him on the board then.
I think fresh out of a gate, they are equal.
We'll agree to disagree on that one.
Yeah, we'll do some arcane stats later. Let's see what versus the what versus what does different situations. So, but yeah, so that is the entire Regulators cadre. So it's definitely a one of because it gives you a lot of options and utility. I mean, the Headsman is the only like true output jack that ISA has, and so just having that in your arsenal is definitely something you're going to want, especially since it doesn't take up a list slot. I mean, you're sacrificing. Yeah. I mean, you're basically sacrificing one list slot for one of these squads to get the Headsman anyways, so it just evens out, because you're going to want to take a Reeve anyways. You're going to want to take at least one squad in skirmish, so it might as well be one of these other two. And so you get the squad / the Headsman for free. Like,
yeah, I think ISA is kind of in a weird spot where, unlike AC, who might be finding ways to get as many cadres into their list as they possibly can, I think ISA is kind of pretty comfortable with just one at all sizes of the game.
Mm-hmm.
And then they maybe want to bring some extra selections. So, like, maybe bring an extra Reeve. I personally think 2 units of Tracers is a good spot to be.
Yeah.
I'm really hoping eventually these things get sold separately, because I do not. Whereas I think those would be good options to have, I am not buying a whole nother cadre box to get a Regulator squad I'm never going to use, and a Headsman.
Yeah.
But I would 100% go and buy a unit of Tracers and a Reeve.
Yeah, I mean, it's just options. Honestly, I think like that's kind of good design, that ISA is in a spot where like they have enough options that are useful that you don't feel the need to go out and replace your whole army like two of the other armies in this list, or 2 other factions after this Kickstarter. So although one of the factions is in a perfectly fine spot, but the new cadre is just dumb.
but we'll get into that in the future.
So they also received 2 non-Cadre models. And one of those, the new solo for ISA, is the Automech. You want to read that one, Sneaky?
Yeah, because
I want to gush about Asa.
I know you want Asa, so I'll take the Automech. Yeah, so the Automech. So ISA finally has its repair solo. I've been saying for the longest time that rich kids don't fix broke things, but I guess ISA decided it was time.
Well, they decided to get a robo-dog to do it.
That's true. They bought a nice thing to fix things so they don't have to worry about it.
They bought an iPuppy to fix their choice.
It does look like an iPuppy. I was gonna say Roomba, but it definitely looks like an iPuppy. So this thing is a Speed 6, which is a fast for a chunky boy, Mat 3, Rat 3, Defense 2, Arm 4, 3 boxes. So it's 1 inch faster than a Marauder. It's the same speed as a Factotum. It's faster than a Grafter and a Engineer. So its abilities, it has Jumpstart, like all the other Engineer types. It has right. Hold I wouldn't even put Grafter in the same realm. Grafter's different. Grafter's different. Grafter's a squad. Grafter's not an engineer, it's a doctor. It's a mad scientist doctor.
Yeah, it's more like mad scientist doctor. He didn't go to evil medical school for 2 years to be called a doctor.
Yeah. He's a surgeon. I guess technically that's what the Grafter is. The Grafter's a surgeon. So it has Jumpstart. It also has Reflex Accelerator, which is really interesting. So when it's charged, it can make attacks with all of its weapons, and it has 2. So it has the Torch, which is a range 4, POW 4 fire spray. So a very solid little gun. The range 4 is pretty limiting, but at least whatever you're shooting at isn't going to get cover. But there's a good chance that you're going to be able, if there's a squad, you're going to be able to hit stuff, or if things are freshly summoned out of a gate, you're going to be able to get multiple things on that if you're base to base. So it gives you options. It has a range 1 POW 4 repair tool, which is also fire type, but doesn't.
Yeah, I asked this when I asked the question about the Reeve on the Kickstarter. They're like, "Oh, that's an oversight. They should both be fire weapons on the Reeve," and they mentioned nothing about the mechanics.
Got you. Yeah. So the repair tool is a fire type, but it does not cause continuous fire. So it's basically a blowtorch. But the other thing's called a torch. I don't know. Whatever it is. So it can attack with both of those at Mat 3, Rat 3. It's not great for output.
Soldering iron.
Yeah, soldering iron. That's what I was thinking. So it's definitely has the highest output of all the engineering types, because if it's charged, it's probably getting off 3 attacks, and they all ignore cover, and it can also put out continuous fire, so it's pretty solid. Or if it's not in a position to make attacks, or if repair is more useful for you, then it can repair, which is great. And on top of all of that, because it's like a little floaty robot iPuppy thing, it has Pathfinder at speed 6.
Pathfinder is actually like really big on, because, well, besides the new Cadre, because they all have thrusters for whatever reason, Pathfinder was a very non-existent thing in ISA. Like, I don't think there was any Pathfinder in ISA previously. Can't think of any.
Don't think so.
So this Cadre also just, if your meta plays with a lot of rough terrain, this Cadre kind of just gets around the whole rough terrain problem ISA might have had.
Yeah. It's once again not going to be useful all the time, but if there's a patch of rough terrain in between your Automech and that Headsman that's taken 3 wounds, that Pathfinder could come in real clutch. So
yeah. Well, I mean, actually today I was playing on Jay's Moonshadow, and just the Automech just being like, "Oh, I don't care about these 4s," and just walking right across them. It actually became a big deal throughout the game.
Yeah, for sure. I know, like, on my FBF maps, or primary maps, I put down a lot more rough terrain than I do in skirmish. I got rid of most of my rough terrain out of skirmish because people were complaining. But, yeah.
I was number 1 on the complainer list.
Justin hates rough terrain. I like as a map builder, I like rough terrain.
I
like rough
Justin
terrain
when it
hates.
does more than just terrain.
We won't get into this argument again. We've gotten into it before. It does what it's meant to do. It's meant to be a negative. Like, it's designed to be a negative. But yes.
But yeah, he's just a solid model. Like I don't think he's blowing up the world. I don't think he's, drastically changing the way that ISA plays. But when somebody gets that Morningstar down to 1 box and you have an automech nearby, you're going to be really happy to have this as an option. So I think he's a very good addition to the faction. I think a lot of what people are feeling with a lot of these releases in this Kickstarter is a lot of power creep. And I feel like he is a model that definitely says, I don't think anybody's going to look at this model and be like, power creep. This guy is just kind of like a very nice thing the faction needed, and nobody's going to be upset about. Is that pretty fair?
Yeah, for sure. It's just a general solid model. It's useful.
Now, we get to talk about the hero of the ISA, Major Asa Drace. You know what? I don't know why. I have a particular love for like utility, like heavy utility things. And Asa is like the utility monster. Okay, so let's talk about her. Her stats are actually kind of sad. Speed 6, Mat 4, Rat 4, Def 3, Arm 3. Okay.
3 boxes.
She's 3 boxes, Def 3, Arm 3. She is not very beefy. She will die to a stiff freeze. So be very, very careful. I've had her die 1 shot to a Relicon before. All it takes is a 6 once you're corroded and you're done. So
yeah.
And that happens.
Mm-hmm.
So, it is what it is. But her stats are not impressive. She's on a 30mm and she's got compound armor. So she also has Aegis Field. So while charged, this model gains cover. Solid rule. Nothing wrong with it. She has Arc Exchange, the Arc Exchange we all know and love. So when you're trying to do her shenanigans, you don't need to worry about putting Arc on her. She will put her own Arc on as long as you have it in your well. So, and I think with this model, you don't have to worry about her ending her activation with Arc if you don't want her to. But if she wanted to, you could just get rid of it. This next rule is really interesting. Field Reinforcement. Remove 1 damage point from this model at the start of each of your turns. I don't think this rule is always good. This rule is never going to be bad unless you're a single wound model. I think the fact that this rule exists and the fact that we all know that it's going to go somewhere else leaves me a little scared for the future. Like I'm hoping that like a heavy or
I think
that the
that's
Colossals or something that comes out in the future doesn't end up with this rule, and it's just like impossible to kill. And if you don't do it in 1 round, then you're like kicking yourself even harder as you just watch this thing tick up health.
Yeah, well, I mean that rule already existed. It's on the ISA mantlet.
Oh yeah, that's true. Yeah, I never used their mantlets, so
yeah. I mean they're not great.
Yeah, they're the only mantlets that don't give compound armor out like candy.
Yeah, or
and
provide,
now ISA finally
provide
has, like,
any
other
other
benefit
benefit.
want compound armor.
Mm-hmm.
But what's exciting about Asa is this next bit. She has a spike called Neural Command Web. During its activation, this model can spike to use Neural Command Web. When it does so, choose one of the following effects. She has 3 effects. There are 2 of them I'm super excited about, and one of them that is just not. It's good. So Field Promotion. This is the one that I'm not super excited about. Maybe that's because I'm AC, and this is just Choose a friendly squad model within 10 inches of this model. Replace the target model with an equal or smaller base size solo from your reserves. The replaced model is destroyed. So it has to be the same base size. So the only way, and you're removing a squad model. So on those 3 DC regulators, you'd have to remove a regulator to get something like a siege breaker or an automech or a reeve. So that's a little sad to me because you don't want to be killing your regulators for nothing, right? And they're 3D. Like if they were 2 DC, it would not feel as bad. Like this would be an option. But at 3 DC, it's a hard sell for me to try and get in one of those powerful models off this ability. But you could bring in Boss, the old Weaver, Paladin Commander, most of the other wild card heroes. Most of them, I think, tokens on a 40mm.
Yeah.
So you bring out most of the other ones. But you actually just don't have very many options you actually want to do in ISA with this, unless you're sacrificing a regulator. And like I said, getting out a Weaver is good. And I mean, it'll win games sometimes, like when you need the Velocity Projector or something for the win, and you don't have a Weaver out. And oh look, I'm going to field promote this guy to a Weaver, and I can do this. But I think the base size restriction on this ability makes it feel less good. Is that fair to say, Sneaky?
Yeah.
I think other factions wouldn't mind this so much, like AC, getting rid of a Centurion for something and then having a Grafter bring something back. Fine. Like even removing a Centurion for a Grafter and then having a Grafter spike to put the Centurion back, actually reasonably decent play. Because sometimes I can put that Centurion unit on a point without ever activating it.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, Marcher Worlds, all of their things except for one of their new solos is on a small base, so it would not feel bad there.
Yeah, I think it's just kind of just the current game state, but as the game changes and new models and squads come out, this could gain a lot of value.
Yeah, I think this is a rule that we're going to have to put a little mark beside, and someday, just write someday. It's kind of like what we did with the Grafter, right? Someday he'll be good. Now's his day. We'll have to put a little asterisk beside this one. This one will be good. Right now, it's very niche. But she has 2 other absolutely amazing abilities. One is Battle Matrix. While within 10 inches of this model, other friendly models gain +1 power dice, that's the red dice, on their attack rolls. Battle Matrix expires at the start of this model's next activation. So imagine a world where you park Asa somewhere where your opponent really can't get to them because they don't have phase projectiles for whatever reason. And she's just projecting this basically 21-inch diameter circle of super tune-up to attacks. You just add an extra red dice to every attack roll you make on a model within that bubble. The accuracy bonus that this adds to your entire army that's within that huge bubble, and in skirmish it is a huge bubble. It's absolutely insane. Anything else to say about that, Sneaky? Like, I don't know if you can even say anything. Like, you can get Warjacks attacking with 4 red dice.
Yep. I mean,
you can get
imagine the Eye of Sorrows with Rat 5 and 4 red dice. Just let that sink into your head for a little while.
It is insane.
Or
like adding power dice on attack rolls is one of the strongest ability things you can do.
Yeah. Or imagine walking up a 3-arc Firebrand or Morningstar with Kinetic Accelerator, and all of your attacks have an extra red dice. Like, gross.
Yeah.
Gross.
This isn't a really gross ability. Now, I've played her a couple games now. One of them, she died very first turn. So that's on me. That's not her. That's me. It's not you, baby. It's me. It was Talons with displacement index and skirmish, so they get to move like 22 inches. So the odds of her dying are actually not that bad. You can't start her on the board versus Talons and skirmish. But the other game,
can you start anything on the board against Talons and skirmish? Like, let's be honest.
Fair. This has been actually a hard ability to use because sometimes the last ability I'm going to talk about is just so much more important. It like I say, I've only got like 3 games with her now, and I'm really trying to find ways to use it, and it's a super amazing ability. And sometimes you're going to find spots in games where people just cannot, either they can't afford to put the attacks on Asa, or they just can't get to Asa, and your whole army just wrecks things when you add that extra red die to all your attack rolls. Like, just think about all of your attack rolls. Like, when you're rolling dice, just add 1 more red dice every time. And just think about how crazy life could be. That's living in the Asa lane right there. Anyways, the actual, probably, in my opinion, scariest rule on her card is Impulse Agitator. Choose a friendly non-vehicle unit within 10 inches of this model. That unit can immediately move up to its speed. What this means is, like, you know how Regulators are like fairly mopey and slow because they're speed 5, and so they threaten like 9 inches with the 2 guys that you bounce in front of the other guy? Well, it's like 9.5, right?
Mm-hmm.
No, it's
Yeah.
5, 3. No, it's like 10.
Yeah. 10.5.
10.5. Well, just imagine if you were able to threaten like 18.5. You know, like the ability to move with this, like double moving in this game is just insane, and moving outside of activation, especially because there are end of pulse round missions, is mind-blowingly strong.
Yeah.
Now, admittedly, Pendulum has gotten rid of all the end of pulse round scoring in skirmish, so most of your games are not going to have end of pulse round scoring, but double moving is absolutely absurd. I kid you not. Sneaky, what were you going to say? I'm sorry.
I don't remember.
Okay.
But
So a few
yeah.
examples of what kind of shenanigans you can bring out. Remember those tracers we were talking about where their biggest redeeming feature was speed A? Well, so Asa can activate. She automatically charges herself. She can spike to then move those tracers 11.2 inches. And then those tracers can activate from there and go another 11.2 inches. That means that, like, in skirmish, I don't know why you'd want to do this, but you could put tracers in your opponent's deployment zone. Turn 1, there's nothing stopping it because they have flight. Like, they will get in the opponent's deployment zone in that situation.
Add in the displacement index, and they're literally off the board.
Right. You know, even something like the Headsman, right? The Headsman, we were just talking about how slow he is. So Asa goes, you start off your turn, you Arcane, or Ascension Catalyst, Ascension Catalyst. So now your Headsman is speed 7. Let's say this is turn 1 in skirmish. He moves up 7. He moves up another 7 during his activation. So now he can spray into your opponent's deployment zone with that disgusting spray. Because he's moved up 14 inches. That means he's 6 inches outside of your opponent's deployment zone. He has Revelators, so stealth doesn't even matter. Things will get hurt. Asa can definitely just change. Like, I think Asa's like maybe even auto-deploy turn 1 in skirmish if you go first. Because some of the disgusting things she can do. You know, like you've got that Morningstar. You can have a Morningstar move 12 inches, put a gate out 5 inches. So you got a gate up at the 18-inch line because that's the back of the gate. You can summon models touching, like just slightly touching into your opponent's deployment zone because of Asa. Like the things that you can do are just so crazy. Just the idea of double moving anything really changes a lot of dynamics in the game. And she doesn't like. It'd be even different if she didn't have arc exchange, to where you didn't have to mess up your arc flow or the dynamics of your arc because of her. She just lets you do it without having to think about it. And I'm telling you, this will get people. This will get people pretty often. And just think about Encrypted Command, where she can do it essentially twice in a turn. She's going to get somebody.
Well, twice in a pulse round, but yeah.
Oh, twice in a pulse run, yeah. Maybe even 3 times in full size, depending on how the deck gets shuffled.
Mm-hmm.
Like like I know a lot of the times I've seen people just place things just okay. Well, your gun is this, and you move this, right? Well, okay. Well, you could get Ascension Catalyst. Okay, fine. I'm outside of your threat range. You can't mess with me on this point. Asa just completely shuts that idea off. Somebody moves off of a point. Oh, none of your things can get over here. I've measured out all your movements. You can't do it. Well, those tracers just say, well, 22 inches later, I'm on that point. Suddenly I've scored it when you thought I couldn't. And you made this crazy play for this other point and maybe got it. Well, now I just made this way less crazy play where I just had to move to it and I got it. So just be careful. If you aren't careful, she's going to get you.
Yeah, there's a lot of stuff in this Kickstarter that just massively increases the threat ranges that you have to worry about just across the board.
Like, end of pulse round scoring, just the fact that she gives ISA this chance to have like 4 contesting things. So like your 2 activations, you can move on to points. You could potentially mortality destabilize her onto a point, and then you could even displacement index something else onto a point, and then she could give you another activation to get something onto a point. So they can contest 5 points in one turn. Potentially. Yeah. I mean, the mortality destabilizer is kind of a niche one, like where you have to be positioned just so.
Mm-hmm.
But so as long as you have a squad within 3 to 3.5 inches of a point, they could, or 3.2 for any size squad, I guess you could say.
Mm-hmm.
Then you can just mortality onto that point. Like there's implications here. There's a lot you can do with it. So don't sleep on Asa. I know for a while I'm going to be trying her over Boss, and that hurts my soul to say. But I think Boss is so scary. But she gives me some, like ISA, she makes you able to do some real shenanigansy things. Like even on slow squads. So Annihilators. You could reiteration complex your Annihilators and double move them turn 1 and just start shooting in your opponent's deployment zone. And they get no cover, and if they put 2 things beside each other, they're each getting extra attacks. Generally. Yeah. It's really scary the kinds of things she can do with that ability. Like, her other abilities are good. Her other abilities are strong. That ability right there is amazing. That is the only thing I'm honestly taking her for. If I get to do the +1 power die thing, that's icing on the cake. In my opinion.
Yeah.
Oh, and we haven't talked about her gun. Because that's probably the least exciting thing of her card. She has a range 10 POW 3 strafe ballistic gun. With her RAP 4, I mean, sure, it'll hit things, it'll do some damage, but it's POW 3. Actually, the weakest gun in ISA, I want to say. I think every other gun except for
the weakness.
Yeah, I think every other gun besides the grenade launcher is POW 4.
The Paladin Commander's Force Cannon.
Oh, yeah.
Mm-hmm.
So, yeah, it's okay. I mean, you'll be happy to have it. I know I've shot it and actually hurt things, so it happens. But it's something that's just there, and you use it while you charge her, and then you spike it off and actually get what you really wanted to activate Asa for.
Yep. So Asa, lots of shenanigans, move things, make stuff attack harder, pop out a solo if you really, really need it. And I mean that basically wraps up the ISA because we've got more shenanigans to talk about.
Oh yeah, I think this is your boy right here.
Yeah.
Each episode we're doing a bonus wild card because there's 4 wild cards. There's 4 factions. Kind of works out nice that way.
Yep.
And this one I think is your boy.
I mean,
sure. Up for me.
Sure. It's got some fun options on it. So, our wild card for this episode is Master Tolkien, the wild card keeper hero solo. Interesting that the keeper is a keyword. We'll see if that comes into play in the future. Also very interesting is it'll work for all factions, including the Empyreans. So I really want to know how they fluff this out, because the Empyreans want to kill the keepers more than anything else, and the keepers are supposed to be like the guardians of humanity that are teaching them how to use the Neo-Mechanika and stuff. So I'm really interested on the fluff on this model and why it works for Empyreans, but we shall see. On to the stats itself. So it's a DC 1 hero. I think all heroes are still DC 1. Now that we have DC 2 solos, I am terrified and excited about what a DC 2 solo is going to look DC 2 hero is going to look like. I can't even imagine, especially with stuff like this guy and Aurelion and Phaethion and Asa.
I mean, they'll have to be heavy war decks, right? Like,
yeah, like I don't even know. I mean, I don't even know. I mean,
they would have to be better than the Divine Tempest.
yeah, Divine Tempest is its official name. The like the Divine Tempest is a DC 2 heavy warjack, and it's not even a hero. I'm terrified. But onto the model itself. So it is Speed 6, Mat 4, Rat 4, Defense 4, Arm 4, Focus 5 with an asterisk. It's on a 40mm base, and it has Pathfinder. It has a range 2 POW 5 Force Strike weapon. So just pretty basic melee attack. It punches
the
you.
Only melee attack that isn't kinetic? Well, besides the fire, the other ones?
No, so as of this Kickstarter, we have our first couple of non-kinetic melee weapons. So this is the first Force one. We have Corrosion on Phaethion, and we have 2 fire ones, one on the Reeve and one on the mech. Yes. So we're starting to expand out, which is exciting, because everything being kinetic, if it's melee, is kind of boring, especially when it has names like Fusion Swords and Fusion Halberds, although those are kinetic, but, you know, it's exciting to see new things. So, on to...
kinetic.
Yeah. Oh, and it's 3 boxes. So, it's tanky. It has the same defensive stats as Astrius, which makes it basically one of the tankiest things in the game. And yeah, the Force Strike also has Cleave and Null Strike. So range 2 POW 5 with Cleave and Null is pretty solid, especially because of one of its abilities, which is Awakened Spirit. So this model can never be charged. And when this model makes a melee or ranged attack, add 2 power dice to the attack roll.
Yep.
Which is pretty awesome. I'm assuming this might be like a theme across like keeper models, if they're going to be releasing more keepers. Or I'm interested to see like what else it would be on with a name like Awakened Spirit, but we'll see. So, I mean, it makes your model completely arc efficient. You never have to worry about charging, and it always gets 2 power dice. It always has high intensity. That's awesome.
Yeah.
But where this card really gets crazy is with its Arcane Adept ability.
You need to take a deep breath before you start this one.
All right. So instead of discarding a Cipher card during step 8 of your turn, that's how it reads. So instead of discarding to your discard pile, you can give the Cipher card to this model. So you reveal the Cipher cards given to this model to your opponent, and this model can have up to 3 Cipher cards at any time. This model can play 1 Cipher during each of its activations. So you, instead of discarding to your discard pile, you can discard to Tolkien, and then when Tolkien activates, it plays that card. Now, if it's a Fury, Furies played by this model are channeled through this model and are range 15. When resolving an attack roll for a Fury played by this model, instead of adding action dice for its focus 5, you add power dice. You can discard any of this model's Cipher cards at the end of any of its activations. Now, a quick little side note on how the Furies work. The Master Tolkien does not gain red dice from your well. it is always going to be a 5 red dice Fury.
Yep.
Except
It does not have arc relay.
unless Asa is using its power field and Tolkien
Yep.
is in that, because it is an attack by Tolkien, not from you, the player. The Fury is played by Tolkien. So it would be a 6 red dice. But currently that is the only exception to that rule. So it's crazy. So it just lets you have extra cipher cards in your turn, which is amazing. But then when you just start thinking about the combinations that you can do, so, we mostly play Skirmish, and Skirmish warjacks rule the world, right?
Well, they
And
did.
yeah, and that's true. And there's so many times where you want to Impulse Inducer and Kinetic Accelerator a warjack, or you want to Arcane Synthesis and Kinetic Accelerator warjack, or you want to Devastation Optimizer and Arcane Synthesis, or all these different things where like they're turn 1 or Cipher Phase 1 cards, and you can only pick 1. Well, now you can pick 2, which just creates insane options. So like being able to charge the Strike Raptor to full and play Kinetic Accelerator at the same time, and suddenly you're looking at multiple PAL 3 armor piercing with a 5 and 3 Strike Raptor that you weren't expecting. You're only expecting 2 attacks, and now he's hitting a bunch of stuff. It's pretty scary. Pretty scary. Or you weren't expecting that uncharged warjack that has a activation token on it to suddenly be unactivated and be fully charged with Arcane Synthesis. Well, now that's what you got to deal with. Like, it's just crazy the amount of stuff that you can pull off. Or you can, throw out a Displacement Index and then Reiteration Complex or Discordian Agitator or Tachytelic, and suddenly not only do you have a squad that you thought you were out of range of in your face, but now it's also getting extra or better attacks. Like, it's crazy the amount of options that you have available to you. Or, they really need to like, you can Encrypted Command Tolkien and then let it activate again, and now you have access to this cipher that you didn't have before, or you can activate it 2, possibly 3 times in a pulse round, and it's just gross. It's gross.
I mean, cipher cards are one of the strongest aspects of the game in general, and him just being able to like add efficiency and be like, oh well, I'll have another one of those. It's pretty huge, and you can even. Sometimes it's kind of just like an intimidation thing. It's like, okay, well, Tolkien's got Velocity Projector on him. You better do something about him. Because I don't want a 5 red dice Velocity Projector coming at me.
Yeah, it's like it just creates a real nasty threat. And, a lot of times there's those cards where you're just like, well, I'm playing this to play it, or I'm discarding it to discard it, just get out of my hand, but it could be useful in a turn or 2. Well, Tolkien can hold up to 3 cards, so that's 3 turns worth of discards you can bank, right?
Well, what's also weird about that is that it also gives you a lot of deck efficiency too. Like, if you've got cards that, like, so in my ISA list currently, I'm running Tachytelic and Plexus Densifier. So what's going to happen eventually is that the end of the pulse round is going to hit, Tachytelic's going to go in my discard pile, and I know I'm not getting that the first turn of the next pulse round. But I could have this Plexus Densifier on Tolkien, and Tolkien will activate that first pulse round, and I still get an effect on that unit. Like, I know I'm getting it, and I don't have to change my game plan for it. Just activating Tolkien, and Tolkien is not a bad activation.
No,
even if he was just a solo that said I get a map 4 PAL, like high intensity swing with cleave and null strike every turn. I don't think he'd be hero levels, but he'd be good.
Right. Yeah.
If they made a normal solo that just said that, hey, I don't ever need to be charged. I still do my thing. I still do it really well. Be fine. He just gets this added benefit of, well, maybe I'll just throw out a 5 red dice Fury, or maybe I'll, displacement index that squad over there, or, all these other little weird things that he can do that you just don't expect, right? Now, I would make a small suggestion about him. You want to use those kind of cards that are the ones that stick in the turn for him if you're trying to do something where you need, like, oh, I need to slip displacer the squad, and then I need to Tacatelic them. You don't want to put the slip displacer on him, because if you put the Tacatelic on them, he can't target them with the slip displacer anymore. So just kind of keep some of that in mind when you're playing. That you can't have 2 of the same squad or same color on the same squad at the same time.
Mhm.
Or any unit at the same time.
Yeah, it still follows all the normal Cypher rules. Yeah,
right. So there's some
there's
some order of activation thing you need to do with that, and just know what you're doing a little bit with it. But very good. He's a phenomenal model, and I'm excited to play him. I know I've played him one time, and he died fairly early, but I've also been like trying to be very aggro with some of these new models. I'm like, haha, you can do all the things.
Yeah, and I mean the awesome thing about him is that Cypher cards other than Furies don't have ranges. So on full size, like he can be sitting off, over in the corner somewhere, or like on a point that's super secure you don't have to worry about, and he activates and he can put the Cypher card on the squad on the other side of the board, right?
I'm telling you, if I could just get a solo in my army that just lets me play an extra Cypher every turn, does nothing else, that is a good solo.
Yeah, it opens up so many options.
And range 15 is nothing to scoff at.
No, not at all. Like it's a solid Fury. It's equivalent to having a 4 focus Fury with 2 arc in your well. That's what 5 white dice equals out to on average. Obviously, on the high end, 1 extra dice is going to give them more possibilities, but on average, they're the same. So it's solid. Like everything he does is good.
Yep.
Like
I'm super excited about him just being able to do these combos that were never possible before.
Yeah, he changes the game in a lot of ways just because it opens up options that to abuse that weren't abusable before. Which is really cool. And then also as we gain access to more ciphers, he'll change. Or whenever we get a new set of ciphers and some of our current ciphers go away, then that'll also be a thing. So, he's going to change with the game. I think he's always going to be relevant. I'm talking probably way too early for that, but the usefulness of the ability is just, it's that good. Right.
I just hope the next keeper comes out and makes him completely irrelevant, and you're like, oh.
Yeah, I mean, if the next keeper has the same ability and then also does other stuff that's better, then sure. But this ability, Arcane Adept, is always going to be relevant. The ability itself, right? It's just that good.
Yeah. So, Sneaky, do you have any closing thoughts on everything we've talked about today?
Master Tolkien's crazy. Ace is crazy. Eye of Sorrows is OP. Rest of the stuff is cool. Reeve is really, really, really good. I'm excited to have a repair bot in ISA because repairing Arm 6 Morning Stars has always been a dream. But overall, I think ISA has gotten some good tech here that's useful and is interesting. So I think one cadre should be in any ISA player's repertoire. Collection. That's the word I'm looking for.
I tend to agree. I think that models that kind of shape the game in a new way that we talked about today are Tolkien and Asa. I think most of the other factions would be less excited about tracers, although they do have the cover ignoring, which a lot of other factions don't have access to. So maybe I'm just gonna put my foot in my mouth there. But I mean, because having a fast squad is so important for ISA, because they've always been seen as the slow faction, and now ASA and tracers kind of turn that on its head a little bit. I think that it does add new gameplay depth to ISA in general, and I think that they've got more tricks than they already had, which I think is a really good thing. I think that anytime you can kind of add new, interesting play styles to a faction that don't necessarily break the game, I think I'm all for it.
Yeah, I agree.
And I don't think that anything... I think they have some very strong effects. I think being able to spike and kill one of those models for removing somebody's Cypher card is very strong. I think that being able to double move is very strong. But I don't think that because it's ISA, it's a little bit more
Palatable.
not game breaking. I think if you gave this to Marcher Worlds, and now the Strike Raptor could cortical, move twice, and then do all of its shenanigans, nothing in the world is safe, right? I think if you gave this to Empyreans with their new Angel squad, and they got to double move, or they got an extra red dice on all 9 of those attacks, or just all these other little weird things that would happen with this army,
Don't
I
get
think
me
it would
excited.
crack the game. I think that in ISA, though, these things are strong, but they're not like game breaking, which is a good thing. That's a very good thing. So, I'm looking forward to testing with ISA. I own ISA. I own AC. Want to buy a lot more for AC than ISA, but it's the way of the beast. So, I'm excited for the changes. I'm a little mopey about Regulators. I just wish they were 2DC. If they were 2DC, I'd be completely on board. But at 3DC, they are just so hard to bring out. And if you're wanting to bring them with Witch Hounds, then you're making this weird, do I want a heavy or do I want this unit of Regulators? And that's a hard decision a lot of the time. And it's not even necessarily a feels good decision. So, anything else, Sneaky?
No, I think that about wraps it up. Thank everybody for listening. Check us out on all of our normal things that we tell you all to check us out on, and keep listening.
For the love of God, join the Discord. We are on there constantly if you want to talk to us.
Yeah.
Join the Discord. We want to talk to you.
Yep.
And,
Also,
I'll be at Boker Brawl this year. So if you want to meet me, Boker Brawl there. I'm signed up for the Friday and Saturday events because travel on Sunday makes me a little leery of signing up to an event I can't finish.
Yep.
But
and if New Jersey's not your thing, then there's also Warfare Weekend and Las Vegas Open.
So look into those. Thank you for listening. And we are going to hopefully come at you with 2 more episodes here pretty quick. The Empyreans and the Marcher Worlds. Bye.
Thank you for listening. This podcast is brought to you by SX Wargames. Now, if y'all enjoyed the content, don't forget to subscribe. Now, for more content, you can check out the Through the Void Gate blog, or join us on the SX Wargames Facebook, Discord, and YouTube. Stay safe and roll super strikes.